Michael Jordan hears a coach telling kids hard work isn't enough, then takes the mic. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The basketball court was alive with the sounds of sneakers squeaking and basketballs bouncing. Dozens of young players, some only just entering their teenage years, ran drills with the intensity of seasoned athletes. Sweat glistened on their brows as they pushed through the practice, eager to learn from the coaches who were there to help them become better. The gym, packed with the energy of these hopeful, wide-eyed kids, was a place of dreams and aspirations. For them, this was where the journey began, where their future in basketball was born. Michael Jordan stood on the sidelines, quietly observing. It wasn't the first time he had visited a youth camp like this. Over the years, Jordan had become an ambassador for the game, showing up at camps and charity events to share his wisdom with the next generation of players. He had seen it all: young players with raw talent, those who struggled but fought to improve, and the ones who seemed destined for greatness. His presence at this camp wasn't just about his fame, it was about the lessons he could pass down to the young players who idolized him. The head coach of the camp, a man who had been around the game for decades, was delivering a speech to the group. His words were meant to motivate, but Jordan couldn't help but listen closely. The coach, frustrated by the lack of progress he had seen in some of the kids, had started to preach something Jordan hadn't expected to hear. "Hard work isn't enough," the coach said, his tone harsh and dismissive. "Some of you just don't have the talent to make it. You can work all day, but if you don't have what it takes, it's never going to happen for you." Jordan's eyes narrowed. He wasn't sure if it was the frustration of hearing those words or the belief he had in hard work that made his chest tighten. He could see the kids' faces as they listened, some looking discouraged, others unsure of what to make of the coach's words. For a moment, Jordan simply watched the group, knowing that this was a pivotal moment. He could tell some of them were beginning to internalize the idea that maybe they weren't good enough, that all their effort might not amount to anything. He knew that feeling. He had faced those doubts himself when he was younger, being cut from his high school varsity basketball team, being overlooked by college recruiters, and having to fight for everything he had achieved. It was a journey of perseverance, not talent alone. Hard work had been the foundation of everything he had built, and hearing someone so experienced tell these kids otherwise struck a chord with him. Jordan glanced at the coach again, who was still lecturing the kids. His words were starting to take root, especially with the more vulnerable kids who had been struggling throughout the drills. It was clear that the coach was trying to motivate them, but his approach was far from what Jordan had learned over the years. He couldn't just stand there and let that message fester. These kids needed to hear something else, a message of hope, of resilience, and, most importantly, of hard work. Jordan made his decision in that instant. He wasn't about to let these kids leave the camp with the belief that they didn't have what it took. The truth was, talent could only take you so far. It was the heart, the mind, and the relentless drive to be better that separated the good from the great. And that's what he had to share with them. He walked over to the coach and tapped him on the shoulder. The coach, taken aback, turned around, a bit surprised to see Jordan standing there. The momentary shock faded as the coach realized who was interrupting his session. "I need to say something," Jordan said firmly, his voice cutting through the gym. "If you don't mind, I think the kids need to hear it." The coach looked at him, hesitated for a brief moment, and then nodded. "Go ahead, Michael." Jordan turned to face the group, who had started to notice the interaction. The players were watching him now, curious and eager. He could feel their eyes on him, a sense of anticipation building as he took a step forward and addressed them. "I've been where you are," Jordan began, his voice steady and commanding. "When I was younger, I wasn't always the best. In fact, I was cut from my high school basketball team. They told me I wasn't good enough. But you know what? I didn't stop. I didn't listen to the people who told me I wasn't talented enough. I worked harder than anyone else, and that's what made the difference." The kids were silent now, hanging on his every word. Jordan's presence was enough to command their attention, but it was the sincerity in his voice that made them believe what he was saying. "I don't care how talented you are," he continued. Talent is important, sure, but it's not the whole story. What separates the good from the great is the work you put in when no one's watching, the hours you spend in the gym when it's just you and the basketball. It's about pushing through the tough times, the moments when you feel like you're not good enough. Because those are the moments that matter most. The ones that build your character. Jordan paused, looking around at the players who were starting to nod, to absorb his words. He could see their body language changing, the uncertainty melting away as they processed the message. You can't control everything, but you can control how hard you work, Jordan added. Hard work isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, every day, and doing your best. It's about getting better, one step at a time, until you look back and realize how far you've come. The gym was still. For a brief moment, there was no sound except for the hum of the lights above. The kids were thinking, processing, absorbing the truth of Jordan's words. The coach, who had initially disagreed with Jordan's approach, stood quietly at the back, observing the shift in the room. Jordan smiled, the weight of his message settling in. Don't let anyone, especially yourself, tell you that you can't make it. You've got what it takes, but it's up to you to put in the work. And remember this, there's no substitute for effort. The only thing standing between you and success is how hard you're willing to work for it. With that, Jordan stepped back, leaving the kids with something more than just a lesson in basketball. He had given them a glimpse into the mindset that had fueled his career, the belief that hard work was the key to everything. As the players began to shuffle back to their drills, Jordan watched with satisfaction. The energy in the gym had changed. It wasn't just about the skills they would develop, it was about the mindset they would carry with them into every challenge they faced. The coach walked over to Jordan, now with a look of understanding in his eyes. You're right, Michael. I guess I lost sight of that. These kids needed to hear that. Jordan gave him a reassuring smile. It's not about discouraging them. It's about teaching them that no matter where they start, if they put in the work, they can get better. They can make it. And that's the message we should always be giving them. As Jordan left the gym that day, he felt a sense of peace. He had stepped in when it mattered, had changed the course of the camp, and most importantly, had given those kids a message they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. For Jordan, this moment was more fulfilling than any championship or MVP award. It was about making a lasting impact on the next generation, reminding them that the real victory was in the effort, the work that went into chasing their dreams. The gym hummed with the energy of young players. Balls bounced relentlessly against the hardwood floor, their sharp echoes bouncing off the walls. Coaches shouted instructions, while players, some visibly struggling, others full of energy, bent low to push themselves further. The camp had been in full swing for several days, and Michael Jordan had watched it all with a keen eye. He had seen the potential in the kids who had something special, talent that could one day lead them to greatness. But he had also noticed something troubling, something that had triggered his decision to step in. Many of the kids, especially the ones who struggled, seemed to be getting discouraged. They looked at their more naturally gifted peers and saw the difference. And as much as the camp was designed to help them grow, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't receiving the message they needed. This feeling had intensified when he overheard one of the camp's head coaches, a seasoned veteran of the game, talking to a group of younger players during a break. The coach, a man who had no doubt seen his fair share of ups and downs in the sport, was trying to motivate the kids, but the words he chose weren't the right ones. Jordan heard him say, "Hard work isn't enough. Some of you just don't have the talent. No matter how hard you try, some of you are never going to make it." The words hung in the air like a weight too heavy for anyone to carry, especially these kids. Jordan knew that the coach didn't mean to crush their spirits, but that's exactly what was happening. The words were final, cutting off the possibility of improvement for many of these kids. And Jordan, for the first time in a long while, felt a strong need to intervene. The idea that effort alone couldn't lead to success, that it wasn't worth trying unless you were born with a certain set of gifts, ran contrary to everything he believed. After all, his own journey hadn't been defined by natural talent. It had been defined by relentless drive, by a refusal to accept defeat, by the belief that with enough hard work, anything was possible. And he knew that those kids needed to hear the same message he had received growing up. They needed to believe that they could achieve greatness, not because of what they were born with, but because of the work they were willing to put in. Jordan walked over to the side of the gym, where the coach was still talking to the players. The kids' heads were down as they absorbed the message, no doubt beginning to internalize the defeatist attitude that had been handed to them. Jordan's heart sank as he saw one kid, a tall, lanky player who had been struggling all day, look away in disappointment. The coach's words were taking root, and Jordan could feel the frustration building inside him. Without a second thought, he approached the coach. "Hey, mind if I say something?" Jordan's voice was calm but firm. The coach looked up, slightly startled, and then quickly recognized the figure standing before him. His face softened in an instant. "Michael, of course. Didn't see you there." The coach gestured to the kids, who were still gathering around, a few of them glancing over at the new arrival. "What do you think?" "They're struggling to understand what it takes to make it." Jordan looked around the gym, where the players were returning to their drills, their energy low and their confidence even lower. He shook his head slightly, knowing the kids needed to hear a different message. "Don't tell them they don't have what it takes," Jordan said, his voice rising just enough for the players to hear. "Tell them that they can always get better. That talent isn't the only thing that matters." The coach, who had been ready to explain his thinking, hesitated. He looked at Jordan, a man who had seen the peak of basketball success, who had put in the work to reach heights no one else had. His own coaching philosophy had always been that talent was the key, and hard work could only do so much. But Jordan's words made him pause. The players were starting to notice Jordan standing there, a few of them whispering among themselves. The coach looked down at the group of kids, their eyes now focused on him, waiting to see what came next. The pressure of the moment seemed to weigh on the coach as he realized that Jordan was challenging his approach in front of the very players he had been trying to teach. But he understood the message that was coming through loud and clear. These kids needed hope, not harsh realities. Jordan stepped forward, his eyes scanning the young faces in front of him. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their hopes that perhaps they could be more than just ordinary. And it was up to him, as an example of what hard work could accomplish, to make sure they understood the real lesson. "All right, listen up," Jordan said, his voice commanding yet inspiring. "I've been where you are. I know what it's like to feel like you don't have what it takes. I know what it's like to be told you're not good enough. I was cut from my high school team, not because I wasn't talented, but because they didn't think I had what it took. I could have quit then, I could have listened to the people who told me I wasn't good enough, but I didn't." He paused, looking at each kid as they absorbed his words. I worked harder than anyone else. I put in the hours, the sweat, and the effort. And that's why I'm here today, talking to you. Because talent will only take you so far. What matters is how much you're willing to give. It's about showing up every day, no matter how hard it gets. It's about the grind, about pushing through the hard times and using them to get better. The room was quiet as the kids processed what he was saying. Their heads were up now, their attention fully on Jordan. The coach stood off to the side, watching as the players began to shift in their posture, their minds seemingly resetting. Jordan continued. Hard work isn't just about showing up, it's about commitment. It's about taking the time to work on your weaknesses and turning them into strengths. It's about pushing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. Because, at the end of the day, the ones who succeed are the ones who don't give up. He paused again, his words sinking in. If you want to be great, it's not about just talent or skills. It's about what you do with those things. It's about how much effort you put into it, how much you're willing to sacrifice for your dream. And no one can take that away from you. For a few moments, there was only silence. The kids were deep in thought, and Jordan could see their eyes light up with a new sense of purpose. The energy in the room had shifted. Where before there had been doubt, now there was a glimmer of hope. They were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could do this if they worked hard enough. The coach stepped forward, looking at the kids with newfound respect. All right, team, he said, his tone softening. We've got some work to do. but I think we can do it. Let's get back to it." Jordan gave the coach a nod of encouragement, then turned back to the players, a smile on his face. "Keep working, and remember this, no matter how talented you are, it's your heart and your work ethic that will get you where you want to go. Keep grinding." As the kids returned to their drills, there was a renewed sense of determination in their movements. Jordan watched them with pride, knowing that the message he had shared with them wasn't just about basketball. It was about life. The real test wasn't whether they had enough talent to succeed, it was whether they had the heart to push through, no matter what. Jordan had given them more than just the tools to be better basketball players. He had given them the confidence to believe that they could overcome whatever obstacles they faced, on and off the court. And that, more than anything, was what they would carry with them long after the camp was over. The gym was buzzing with activity as the youth camp progressed into its second week. The energy was still high, and the kids were visibly improving. Drills had become more competitive, and there was an unmistakable sense of pride in the air. Every player was trying to outdo the other, pushing themselves harder than they had before. But for Michael Jordan, the excitement felt different now. It wasn't just about the competition, it was about the message he had shared with them, about the fire he had ignited. He could see the shift in the way the kids carried themselves. They were no longer just practicing skills, they were practicing hard work, commitment, and the belief that they could achieve more. The coach who had initially made the discouraging remark, "Hard work isn't enough," had started to change his perspective. Jordan could tell that the coach was reflecting on his words and beginning to understand the power of the message Jordan had conveyed. There was a subtle shift in the coach's approach to teaching. Instead of focusing only on raw talent, he was now emphasizing the importance of effort, consistency, and a growth mindset. The way the coach interacted with the players was different. He encouraged them to make mistakes and learn from them, to keep fighting even when things weren't going their way. The players, in turn, started to trust that hard work would lead to improvement, no matter where they started. Jordan knew this wasn't going to be an easy road. Change, especially in mindset, took time. He understood that from his own journey. He remembered the countless hours spent working on his jump shot, his footwork, and his conditioning. He remembered the rejection, the frustration, and the doubt. But he also remembered the thrill of seeing results, the moment when hard work started to pay off. He knew that if he could show these kids that same belief in themselves, they could achieve more than they ever thought possible. It was during a break between drills that Jordan saw the kid who had caught his attention early on. Marcus, a lanky 13-year-old who had been struggling to keep up with the more athletic kids, was sitting off to the side, holding his knees to his chest. He was watching the others play, but there was a noticeable slump in his posture. Jordan had seen that look before, the frustration of someone who felt like they didn't belong, the doubt that creeped in when they couldn't measure up. It reminded him of his younger self. Jordan didn't hesitate. He walked over to Marcus and sat down next to him. "Hey, Marcus," Jordan said, his voice soft but firm. "How are you doing?" Marcus looked up, clearly startled, but then quickly relaxed when he saw who it was. "I'm okay, just tired," he said, his voice trailing off. Jordan nodded, understanding. "Yeah, it's a lot of work. But you're doing good. I see you putting in the effort out there." Marcus shrugged. "I don't know. I can't keep up with them. They're so much better than me." Jordan smiled, leaning in slightly. "Let me tell you something. When I was your age, I wasn't the best player on the court either. But you know what I did? I worked harder than anyone else. And I didn't give up. I kept pushing, kept improving, even when I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere." Marcus looked up at him, his eyes full of uncertainty. "But what if I can't do it? What if I'm just not good enough?" Jordan's smile widened, and he placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "That's exactly why you need to keep going. It's not about being good enough right now, it's about getting better every day. You'll face challenges, and there will be moments when you feel like giving up. But if you keep working, if you keep pushing, you'll see progress. And when you see that progress, it will make every drop of sweat worth it." Marcus looked at him, still unsure but starting to believe what Jordan was saying. So you're saying I just have to keep working? Exactly, Jordan said. It's about putting in the effort. The only way to get better is to show up, give it your best, and keep learning from your mistakes. Talent isn't enough. You need to develop your skills, your mind, and your heart. Marcus nodded slowly, the weight of Jordan's words settling in. I'll try. Jordan stood up, giving him a supportive pat on the back. That's all I ask. And remember, you're not alone in this. We're all here to help you. As Jordan walked back toward the center of the gym, he noticed a change in Marcus's demeanor. He was no longer slouched over, but sitting upright, his eyes focused on the action on the court. It wasn't a huge transformation, but it was a start. Jordan could see that spark in him, the same one he had felt when he was a young player, working tirelessly to prove himself. The camp progressed, and as the days went on, it became clear that the message Jordan had shared was taking root. The players were more engaged than ever, working together, supporting each other, and striving to improve. There was less talk of talent and more talk of effort, progress, and teamwork. The camp was becoming a place where kids weren't just learning basketball skills, they were learning life skills. It wasn't just the kids who were changing. The coaches, too, were beginning to embrace the mindset that Jordan had introduced. They were more focused on the individual growth of each player, pushing them to be better not just for the team, but for themselves. Jordan's influence was felt across the board. It was no longer about being the best player, it was about becoming the best version of yourself, and that was something every player could strive for, regardless of their natural talent. One evening, after a particularly intense practice, Jordan sat down with a few of the coaches, reflecting on the progress they had made. The gym was quieter now, with the players cooling down and preparing to leave. The coaches looked at him with a mix of admiration and gratitude. "Michael, I've got to say, I didn't expect this kind of impact," one of the coaches said. "You've really changed the atmosphere here. The kids are different, more focused, more determined." Jordan nodded, leaning back in his chair. "It's not just about basketball. It's about the mindset. These kids need to know that it's not just about what you're born with. It's about how much you're willing to put in. The talent will come with the work." Another coach chimed in. "I've seen a few kids really start to turn the corner, Marcus, for one. I thought he was going to give up after the first couple of days. But now, he's out there working harder than anyone." Jordan smiled. "That's what it's all about. He's learning that effort is what makes the difference. I saw that in myself when I was his age. The hardest moments are the ones that shape you the most." As the camp drew to a close, the final day arrived. The players were exhausted but excited for the chance to show off everything they had learned. Jordan had spent every day at the camp, watching the kids grow, watching them push themselves. He wasn't there to watch them compete against each other, he was there to watch them compete with themselves. And in doing so, he had seen transformation in the players, in the coaches, and even in himself. As the final drills and scrimmages took place, Jordan stood on the sidelines, looking at the kids with a sense of pride. They had embraced the lessons, and they had learned that the only thing standing between them and their goals was the work they were willing to put in. They understood now that greatness wasn't about talent, it was about effort, persistence, and a refusal to quit when things got tough. By the time the camp ended, the gym was filled with a sense of accomplishment. The players had become a team, not just in name but in spirit. And Jordan, standing among them, knew that he had done more than just teach them basketball. He had shown them how to work for their dreams, how to fight for their place in the game, and, most importantly, how to believe in themselves. As he prepared to leave, he walked over to Marcus, who was packing up his gear. The young player looked up, a grin spreading across his face. "I think I'm ready now," Marcus said, his voice filled with confidence. Jordan smiled. "You've always been ready. You just needed to believe in yourself. Keep working, Marcus. You've got what it takes." With that, Jordan left the camp knowing that the real work was just beginning for the kids. But for now, he was content. He had shared his message, his belief in the power of hard work, and he knew that it would carry them further than any talent ever could. The final day of the camp was fast approaching, and the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. The players, many of whom had come in with doubts about their abilities, had grown more confident over the course of the week. The gym was filled with a sense of energy and purpose as the kids prepared for the final scrimmages and challenges. Michael Jordan stood at the edge of the court, watching as the players ran through their warm-ups. He could feel the progress in the air. These kids weren't just learning basketball, they were learning how to believe in themselves, to trust in their efforts, and to never give up, no matter the circumstances. Jordan had spent every moment of the camp observing, offering advice, and speaking to the players. He had seen them struggle, seen them doubt their own potential, but he had also witnessed their growth. What started as a group of kids unsure of themselves had turned into a team, a group of young athletes who believed they could achieve more, who understood that hard work and perseverance were the real keys to success. They were no longer defined by their initial struggles but by their willingness to push through them. That transformation was something Jordan took immense pride in. As the players lined up for their final scrimmage, Jordan felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. It wasn't the same as being on the court himself, but he could still feel the energy, the excitement of competition, the nerves, and the desire to prove oneself. He knew that this moment wasn't just about basketball. It was about showing the kids that they could apply the same principles of effort and resilience in everything they did, whether it was on the court or in their daily lives. This was about reinforcing the lessons they had learned throughout the camp, the importance of hard work, the belief in their own potential, and the power of never giving up. The final scrimmages were intense. The kids played with a new level of intensity, their movements more deliberate, their decisions more confident. Jordan could see the improvement in their skills and their mentality. The players who had once looked lost on the court now played with purpose. Marcus, the kid Jordan had spoken to earlier, was a prime example of this transformation. He was no longer the unsure player who had slumped on the sidelines. He was now driving to the basket with confidence, taking shots that just a few days ago he would have hesitated to take. He had internalized the lessons Jordan had shared with him about hard work and effort, and it was clear in the way he played. As the scrimmages continued, Jordan couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about who won or lost, it was about the journey these kids had taken to get here. They had learned to trust in their abilities, to fight for every possession, and to keep pushing, even when things didn't go their way. It was the kind of growth that couldn't be measured by scores or statistics. It was a transformation that would stick with them for the rest of their lives. During a timeout, Jordan called the players together. As they huddled around him, he could see the sweat on their brows and the fire in their eyes. They were tired, but there was no sense of defeat. They were determined to finish strong. "You've done more than just get better at basketball," Jordan began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "You've learned how to fight through adversity. You've learned that hard work isn't a one-time thing, it's a way of life. You've learned that when you put in the effort, you can accomplish things you never thought possible. That's the true lesson of this camp." He paused, looking at each player, making sure they understood the weight of his words. "You're not the same players you were when you walked in here. You've all grown, and that's because you chose to work. Remember that. Whether it's on the court or in life, the same principles apply. Keep pushing. Keep working. Because you have what it takes. Never forget that." As the players returned to the court, Jordan could see a visible change in their demeanor. They weren't just playing to win anymore, they were playing to prove something to themselves. And that, he knew, was the real victory. As the final minutes of the scrimmage ticked away, the kids played with a renewed sense of purpose, giving everything they had. The energy in the gym was electric. They weren't just competing, they were thriving, learning the value of hard work, discipline, and effort. The buzzer sounded, signaling the end of the camp. The gym was filled with applause, both from the kids and the coaches who had been watching from the sidelines. It wasn't just the players who had changed during the camp, the entire atmosphere had shifted. The coaches, many of whom had been skeptical of Jordan's message at first, were now believers in the power of hard work and effort. They had seen the kids grow, seen them overcome their doubts, and it had been just as much a learning experience for them as it had been for the campers. Jordan stood back, watching as the players celebrated. He knew that the real challenge had just begun. The lessons they had learned in the camp would need to be carried forward, into their future practices, into the games they played, and into every obstacle they faced in their lives. He hoped that the belief in themselves that they had gained over these few days would remain with them long after they left the camp. Later that evening, Jordan stood alone in the gym, the lights dimmed as the final cleanup took place. He reflected on everything that had happened. The camp had been a success, but more than that, it had been a chance to give back, to share the lessons that had shaped his own journey, to pass down the wisdom that had gotten him through the toughest moments of his career. The kids had been receptive, open to the idea that hard work was the key to everything. And it wasn't just about basketball. It was about life. Jordan had always been driven by the desire to be the best. But as he looked around the gym, seeing the kids who had pushed through their doubts and given their all, he realized that the greatest legacy he could leave wasn't the trophies or the titles. It was the impact he had on others, the way he could inspire them to push beyond their limits. The next day, as the camp came to a close, the players gathered for one final meeting. The coaches thanked them for their hard work, and Jordan stood at the front, ready to address the group one last time. "I'm proud of each and every one of you," Jordan said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You've shown what it means to work hard, to fight for your dreams, and to never give up. But this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Everything you've learned here can be applied to every part of your life. Don't ever forget that you control your destiny. The only thing standing between you and your goals is how much you're willing to work for them." The players stood silently, absorbing his words. Jordan knew that their journey wasn't over, that they would face more challenges, more moments of doubt, and more obstacles along the way. But he also knew that they were better equipped now to face those challenges. They had learned that hard work was the key to success, that they could overcome anything with enough effort and determination. As the players filed out of the gym, Jordan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The work wasn't done, but the foundation had been laid. The next generation of players, the ones who had been inspired by his message, would carry that belief forward. And that, to him, was the true victory. The camp was officially over, but for Michael Jordan, the work was far from done. As the final day came to a close and the players packed their bags and said their goodbyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, not just in the kids, but in himself. He had walked into the camp expecting to give back, to share the lessons he had learned through his years in the NBA. But in the end, he had received just as much as he had given. The energy in the gym, the way the players responded to him, had reignited something inside him. It wasn't just about basketball. It was about growth, both on and off the court. In the days that followed, Jordan kept in touch with the coaches, checking in on how the players were doing. He wanted to make sure the message had stuck, that the hard work mindset wasn't something that would fade away once the camp ended. He had seen the shift in the players' attitudes, but he also knew that they were still in the early stages of their development. There would be setbacks, failures, and moments when they questioned whether all their effort was worth it. But Jordan believed in them. He had seen firsthand how far determination and discipline could take you, even when things seemed impossible. One afternoon, a week after the camp ended, Jordan received an email from the head coach. It was an update on the players, and as he read through the details, he felt a rush of pride. Marcus, the player who had struggled the most at the beginning, had made huge strides. Not only had he been showing up early for practices, but he was now starting to take on a leadership role with the younger kids in the program. Other players had also stepped up, bringing their teammates into the fold, encouraging them when they were tired or discouraged. It wasn't just about individual progress anymore, it was about the team. Jordan sat back in his chair, reflecting on how far they had come. These weren't just kids who had learned basketball drills, they were kids who had learned how to work. They had learned that success wasn't just about the talent you were born with, it was about the willingness to show up, to push through the tough days, and to believe that every setback was an opportunity to grow. But Jordan knew that as much as he had instilled a sense of hard work in them, the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The challenges were only beginning. As he looked at the email again, a thought crossed his mind. There was more to be done. He couldn't just leave things as they were. If these kids were really going to internalize what they had learned, they needed to see how it applied in the real world. They needed to see how persistence, grit, and hard work could lead to success beyond the camp, beyond basketball. That evening, Jordan made a call to his old friend and former teammate, Scottie Pippen. The two had played together for years, and they had seen firsthand how dedication could turn a good player into a great one. Scottie was known for his defensive prowess and his work ethic, and Jordan knew he was the perfect person to help drive home the point. "Scottie," Jordan said, after a quick greeting, "I need your help. We've got these kids from the camp, they're motivated, they're working hard, but they need to see what this really looks like outside of drills and scrimmages. They need to see how hard work applies in the real world." Scottie listened for a moment before responding, his voice full of understanding. "I get it, Mike. You want them to see what it takes to really make it. I'm in. Let's do something." A plan started to take shape. Jordan and Scottie would invite the kids to a special session where they would not just watch professional basketball players but also hear about the behind-the-scenes work that went into their success. It wasn't just about watching a game, it was about showing them the hours of practice, the sacrifices, and the mental toughness that made all the difference. A few days later, the group of campers gathered in a local gym, excited but nervous. Jordan and Scottie were there to meet them, along with a few other former players who were willing to lend their time and insight. The kids looked around, unsure of what to expect. They had come to see their idols in action, but they were about to get a first-hand look at what it took to get to that level. Jordan greeted the kids with a smile, and as they all settled in, he began speaking. "This," Jordan said, "is where the real work happens. What you see on TV is just the end result. What you don't see are the countless hours spent in gyms, the early mornings and late nights, the sacrifices made to get to this point. We're here today to show you what it takes to get to the top, but you need to understand that it's not just about the game. It's about every aspect of your life. You need to put in the work every single day, even when no one's watching." Scottie stepped up next. "When we played together, it wasn't just about being talented. It was about being disciplined, making sure every day counted. The real test of your work ethic is how you handle the bad days. How you deal with the losses, the setbacks, the days when your body hurts, when you don't want to get up and practice. Those are the moments that define you." Jordan nodded, his voice steady. "And we're not telling you this to discourage you. We're telling you this because you have to know it. No one will hand you success. You have to earn it. Every day. Every practice. Every shot." The group was quiet now, listening intently. Jordan and Scottie led them through a series of drills, showing them not just the moves, but the thinking behind them. They explained how every step, every motion, had a purpose. They demonstrated how to push through fatigue, how to stay focused even when it felt like the body was ready to give up. For the kids, it wasn't just about improving their jump shots or their footwork, it was about learning how to approach every challenge with the mindset of a champion. As the day went on, Jordan saw a change in the kids. They were no longer just trying to impress the pros in the gym. They were pushing themselves, competing with a new sense of purpose. The message had sunk in: they could achieve greatness, not because of their innate talent, but because of the effort they put in. By the end of the day, sweat-drenched and exhausted, the kids had a newfound understanding of what it took to make it. They weren't just impressed by Jordan and Scottie, they were inspired by them. They had seen firsthand the work behind the success, and they now understood that hard work wasn't just a catchphrase, it was the foundation of everything they wanted to accomplish. Jordan walked out of the gym that evening feeling a sense of accomplishment. He had done more than just coach these kids on basketball skills. He had shown them what it really meant to work, to sacrifice, and to strive for something bigger than themselves. He had given them the tools they needed to take the next steps in their journeys. And as he thought back to the camp, he realized that this was just the beginning for them. The lessons they had learned would stick with them, guiding them not only on the court but in every part of their lives. The days following the special session with Jordan and Scotty were filled with excitement and newfound purpose for the campers. The players, having seen firsthand the effort and discipline that went into becoming successful, carried that energy with them as they returned to their own training sessions. It was clear that the experience had made a lasting impact. They approached their practices with renewed intensity, no longer just going through the motions but committing to every drill with a focus they hadn't had before. For Michael Jordan, the camp's end didn't mark the end of his involvement. He kept in touch with the coaches, checking in on the kids and offering advice when needed. He knew that the lessons they had learned would be tested in the coming weeks and months. The real challenge wasn't the camp or even the special training session, it was the work they did once they were back on their own, without the constant presence of mentors like him. Jordan often thought about Marcus, the lanky kid who had struggled at the beginning of the camp. Marcus had shown remarkable growth, but Jordan knew that the true test of his development would come in the days and weeks that followed. The camp had given him a spark, but Marcus needed to carry that spark with him, turning it into a flame of determination that would drive him through the inevitable struggles and setbacks he would face. Jordan couldn't help but wonder how much he would continue to improve once the novelty of the camp wore off, once the real-world challenges of competition and self-doubt crept back in. One evening, a couple of weeks after the camp ended, Jordan received a text message from one of the coaches. It was an update on Marcus, and it made Jordan's heart swell with pride. Marcus had continued to show up early for practices, putting in extra work on his shooting, dribbling, and conditioning. He was starting to show leadership in his group, helping his teammates who were struggling, encouraging them when they felt tired or frustrated. His attitude had shifted completely from the self-doubt and hesitation he had exhibited during the camp. Jordan couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had been part of Marcus's transformation, but now it was up to Marcus to keep the fire burning. Jordan knew that Marcus wasn't alone in this. The camp had ignited something in all the players, a desire to improve and a belief that their efforts could lead to success. The coaches had bought into the idea that hard work and persistence were the real keys to success. They had all seen it firsthand in the gym. It wasn't just about natural talent, it was about the work you put in when no one was watching, about the hours spent perfecting skills, and about the willingness to fail and get back up. Still, Jordan understood that inspiration was a fragile thing. It could be easily lost in the grind of daily practice, overshadowed by moments of failure or discouragement. The key was consistency, doing the work, day in and day out, regardless of how you felt or the challenges you faced. Jordan had learned this lesson the hard way, and it had been a crucial part of his journey to greatness. A few months later, Jordan returned to Wilmington for a local charity event. The event was small, but it gave him a chance to reconnect with the community and check in on the kids from the camp. As he entered the gym where the event was being held, he spotted several familiar faces, players he had seen struggle, players who had shown promise during the camp, and players who had been in need of a boost. There was a buzz of excitement in the air as the kids waited for their chance to meet Jordan, to show him how far they had come. Jordan made his way over to a group of young players who had been part of the camp. They were excited to see him again, eager to show off their progress. He asked them how things had been going, and they immediately began telling him about their recent games, their improvements in specific skills, and how they were pushing themselves in new ways. Jordan could see the difference in their confidence and determination. They weren't just talking about talent anymore, they were talking about their commitment to the process, their desire to get better. It was the kind of mindset that would carry them far, and Jordan was proud to have played a part in cultivating it. Then, as Jordan was talking to a few more players, Marcus approached him. He had grown taller, more muscular, and his posture was different. There was a certain confidence about him now. He looked Jordan in the eye, offering a shy but proud smile. "Hey, Mr. Jordan," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I wanted to thank you again for what you taught us. I've been working hard, and I think it's starting to pay off." Jordan gave him a warm smile, glad to see that Marcus was still carrying the lessons with him. "I see it, Marcus. I can tell you've been putting in the work. How are things going on the court?" Marcus nodded, clearly excited to share his progress. "I've been practicing my shot every morning before school. I've also been working on my footwork in defense. I've had a couple of games where I felt like I was really in control. And I've been helping the other guys with their drills." Jordan raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You're not just focusing on your own game, you're helping others. That's leadership right there." Marcus's smile widened. "Yeah, it feels good to help out. I remember when I was struggling, and how much it meant when people took the time to help me. So, I try to pass it on." Jordan could see the maturity in Marcus's words, the shift from self-doubt to self-assurance. The growth wasn't just physical, it was mental. Marcus was no longer thinking of himself as someone who had to be fixed. He had become someone who could contribute to the success of others, someone who understood that the work was just as much about helping others grow as it was about improving yourself. Jordan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You've come a long way, Marcus. Keep pushing yourself. The real test is consistency. Keep working, keep getting better, and never let anyone, especially yourself, tell you that you can't make it." Marcus looked up at him, a spark in his eyes. "I won't forget what you said, Mr. Jordan. I'm going to keep working." As Jordan walked away from the event later that day, he felt a deep sense of pride. He had seen the change in Marcus and the others at the camp, but seeing them months later, still working hard and still believing in themselves, solidified the impact of the lessons they had learned. Jordan knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy for any of them. They would face challenges, moments of doubt, and setbacks. But he also knew that they now had the mindset to overcome those obstacles. They had learned that success wasn't about natural talent, it was about effort, discipline, and the refusal to give up. And that, to him, was the true victory. The journey was just beginning for Marcus and the others. The lessons of hard work, commitment, and resilience would stay with them, shaping their lives both on and off the court. Jordan's role in their development wasn't just about teaching basketball, it was about teaching them how to face the world with determination and belief in their ability to overcome anything. The camp had been a turning point, but the real test came in the days, weeks, and years to come. And as Jordan reflected on all they had accomplished, he knew that the future for these kids was bright. The foundation had been laid. All they had to do now was keep building. Months had passed since the camp, and Michael Jordan often found himself reflecting on the impact of those few days. The players had come and gone, and some had moved on to more intense basketball leagues or high school teams, but the lessons from the camp had stayed with them. Jordan had always been about excellence, but now, in a different phase of life, he realized that his greatest accomplishment wasn't his 6 NBA titles or his MVP trophies. It was the impact he had on the next generation of athletes, those who hadn't yet achieved greatness but who would one day carry his message forward. One evening, Jordan received a call from the coach of the camp, one of the people who had been skeptical of Jordan's message at the start. Now, the coach was a believer. He had seen firsthand how the camp had changed the kids and wanted to update Jordan on their progress. "Mike," the coach began, "I have to tell you, the kids are doing great. Marcus, especially. He's been leading by example. It's like he's transformed before our eyes." Jordan leaned back in his chair, listening intently as the coach recounted the progress Marcus and the others had made. The feedback was exactly what he had hoped for. Marcus had taken the lessons of the camp seriously, and it was clear that his dedication to improving his game was paying off. Not only was he playing better, but he was also taking on a leadership role among his peers, helping others who were struggling, and encouraging them to stick with it. The mindset shift that Jordan had hoped for was taking root in the kids who had attended the camp, and it was spreading beyond just basketball. Marcus had even taken it a step further. The coach told Jordan how he had gone out of his way to start a small group of younger players to work with on the fundamentals, just like Jordan had done during the camp. It wasn't something anyone had asked him to do, but Marcus saw an opportunity to make a difference, to pass on what he had learned. He wasn't just thinking about his own success anymore, he was thinking about how to help others achieve their goals as well. Jordan's heart swelled with pride. He had known Marcus had potential, but this was something different. The drive and leadership Marcus was showing now weren't just a product of Jordan's words during the camp, they were a reflection of his own character. Jordan had given the kids tools to improve themselves, but Marcus had taken those tools and used them to build something bigger. This wasn't just about basketball. It was about life. The coach continued with more updates, and Jordan couldn't help but feel that the ripple effect had begun. He had always felt that greatness wasn't about doing it alone, that the true test of success was in how you influenced others. Marcus had become an example of that, taking the hard work mentality and passing it on. This, he realized, was what it was all about: the community, the support, the belief that you could lift each other up to new heights. The conversation turned to the future, and the coach mentioned a tournament coming up, one where many of the kids from the camp would be playing. He invited Jordan to come and watch, to see firsthand how the kids were applying what they had learned. Jordan didn't need much convincing. He had seen the potential during the camp, but this was a chance to see it in action. He agreed, and plans were made for him to attend the tournament. When the day arrived, Jordan entered the gym with a sense of anticipation. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he was excited to see how the players had progressed. The gym was packed with families, coaches, and fans. The energy was electric. Jordan stood off to the side, watching as the teams warmed up. He spotted Marcus right away. He looked different, more confident, more composed, but there was also something else. There was a fire in his eyes, a quiet determination that told Jordan everything he needed to know. This wasn't the same kid who had doubted himself during the camp. This was a player who believed in his abilities, who had put in the work to get here. The game began, and Jordan watched closely, noting the changes in Marcus's play. It wasn't just the shots he made or the way he moved on the court. It was his leadership. He communicated with his teammates, encouraging them when they missed a shot or made a mistake. He didn't get frustrated or discouraged. Instead, he led by example, showing them how to shake off errors and focus on the next play. This was what Jordan had always done on the court. When his team was down, he didn't just rise to the occasion for himself, but for everyone around him. Marcus was doing the same thing. The game was intense. The team went back and forth, each side making plays, each side trying to prove they were the better team. But Jordan could see it in the way Marcus played. There was something different about him. When the team needed a big play, Marcus stepped up. He didn't hesitate. He didn't shy away from the pressure. It was clear that he had internalized the lessons of the camp, the hard work, the resilience, the refusal to give up. As the game came down to the final minutes, Marcus had the ball in his hands. The opposing team was tough, but Marcus had become tougher. He drove to the basket, maneuvering past defenders, his eyes fixed on the rim. He made a move to the side and released a perfect shot. The ball sailed through the air, and the crowd held its breath. The ball swished through the net, and the gym erupted into cheers. Marcus had done it. He had led his team to victory. The final buzzer sounded, and Marcus's teammates rushed to congratulate him. Jordan, who had been standing quietly by the sidelines, couldn't help but smile. He had seen countless game-winning shots in his career, but this one felt different. This wasn't just about basketball, it was about the journey. It was about Marcus's growth, his ability to overcome his doubts, and the leadership he had shown. It was a reflection of everything Jordan had tried to teach him and the other players during the camp, that success wasn't about talent alone, it was about hard work, dedication, and the willingness to keep pushing, no matter what. As the players celebrated, Marcus caught sight of Jordan standing off to the side. His face lit up with a wide smile, and he jogged over to him. "You saw that?" Marcus asked, out of breath but beaming with pride. "I did it. I finally did it." Jordan gave him a nod, proud of everything Marcus had accomplished. "I told you, Marcus. You had it in you the whole time. You just had to believe in yourself and put in the work. Today, you showed everyone that you can do it. Not just with talent, but with effort." Marcus looked down, a shy smile still on his face. "Thanks, Mr. Jordan. I couldn't have done it without what you taught us." Jordan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did it yourself, Marcus. But remember, it's not about one game, one win, or one shot. It's about what you do next. Keep working and keep leading. Marcus nodded, his eyes bright with determination. I will. As Jordan left the gym that night, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had seen the impact of his message, the way the kids had grown and taken the lessons of the camp to heart. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Marcus had become a leader, and the others would follow in his footsteps. The lessons they had learned weren't just about basketball, they were about life. And as long as they continued to put in the effort, they would continue to grow. This was the legacy Jordan had hoped for. Not the wins or the accolades, but the ability to inspire the next generation to believe in themselves and in the power of hard work. He knew that Marcus, and the others like him, would carry that message forward long after the camp had ended. And that, more than anything, was what made him proud. Months had passed since the tournament, and Michael Jordan had kept his eye on the young players he had mentored during the camp. As the season for many of them continued, he received sporadic updates from coaches, parents, and even from the kids themselves. It was clear that the work wasn't over. It wasn't about the one moment, the camp or even the tournament, it was about how the kids were going to carry on. They had taken what they'd learned, but now it was their responsibility to keep moving forward, to make hard work a part of their everyday routine. Jordan reflected on how far they had come since the camp. What he had initially thought would be a one-time opportunity to give back had blossomed into something bigger. The kids had taken his message to heart. More than just working hard on the court, they had begun to see how effort applied to everything in life, academics, relationships, their work ethic outside of basketball. That spark of belief had turned into a flame, and now it was their job to keep it burning. One evening, after a long day of meetings and phone calls, Jordan found himself thinking about Marcus. It had been a few months since he'd seen him on the court, a few months since he'd witnessed the young man's transformation firsthand. Marcus had gone from a kid doubting his place on the court to a player who not only excelled but had become a leader on his team. Jordan had heard from Marcus's coach that he was still helping the younger players in his community, sharing what he had learned about hard work, about leadership, and about how important it was to never give up. The pride Jordan felt was immeasurable. The words he had shared with Marcus, with the entire camp, had stuck. And now, it was about seeing how far they could go. A few weeks later, Jordan received a call that would once again pull him back into the fold. It was the coach of the Youth League tournament, the same one where Marcus had hit the game-winning shot. The coach had invited him to come back, to speak once more, not just to the kids but to the entire league. Jordan hesitated at first, thinking he had already done his part. But as the coach explained the situation, Jordan realized this was an opportunity to finish what he had started. The kids needed to hear from him one more time. They needed to understand that the work didn't stop with a single tournament win. There would always be challenges ahead, and success would come down to how well they responded to those challenges. Jordan agreed to attend. He wanted to see how the kids had progressed and whether their newfound mindset had taken hold in the long run. He wanted to make sure that they were still pushing themselves, still believing in the power of their effort. He was no longer just a mentor in the camp, he had become an integral part of their journey, a symbol of what could be achieved when someone refused to back down from the grind. The day of the event arrived, and the gym was filled with players, coaches, and families. Jordan walked through the doors, his presence immediately making an impact on the crowd. As he entered the space, he spotted Marcus right away, now taller and more muscular, but his demeanor had changed even more. There was a calm confidence about him, an assurance that Jordan knew had been cultivated through hard work, discipline, and the lessons they had discussed all those months ago. Marcus waved, and Jordan smiled, making his way over to him. "You still keeping up with the work, Marcus?" "I've been trying, Mr. Jordan," Marcus replied. "Still pushing. It's not always easy, but I keep reminding myself of what you said. It's the effort that counts." Jordan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, proud to see the change in him. "That's exactly it. And you're helping others along the way too, right?" Marcus nodded. "I've started a little group. We work on shooting drills and conditioning together. I tell them the same thing you told me. Hard work is everything. It's not about being the best at first. It's about getting better every day. Jordan gave him an approving smile. That's what it's all about, Marcus. You've come a long way, and now you're passing that knowledge forward. Keep leading. The crowd began to settle, and the coach of the league stepped up to the microphone, introducing Jordan. The gym quieted, the energy palpable. Jordan could feel the weight of the moment. He wasn't just addressing the kids anymore. He was speaking to an entire community, parents, coaches, and players who had seen firsthand how hard work could change lives. He walked up to the front, the microphone in his hand, and addressed the crowd. "Thank you for having me back," Jordan began. "It's always a pleasure to be here with you all. When I came to the camp, I didn't just come to teach basketball. I came to share a lesson I've learned over the years, and I've seen it stick with so many of you. I'm proud of all of you for taking that message to heart, and I want you to remember something. It's not just about basketball. It's about life." He paused, looking around at the young players, the coaches, and the parents who had gathered to hear him speak. The real key to success is the effort you put in and day out. The work you put in when no one's watching, when you're tired, when you think you've hit a wall. That's when you have to push harder. That's when you find out what you're really made of. And that's what makes the difference in the long run. Jordan glanced over at Marcus, who was standing in the back with the younger players. He could see the pride in Marcus's face, the quiet confidence that had replaced the uncertainty that had once defined him. Jordan's words were no longer just a motivational speech to a group of kids. They had become a reminder of the journey they had all gone through, the work they had put in, and the belief that they had in themselves. "You've all heard me say it before, but I'm going to say it again," Jordan continued, his voice filled with conviction. "Talent alone will never get you where you want to go. It's the work, the discipline, the persistence. That's what makes a winner. And I see it in every one of you, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been playing for years. You have the power to create your own success." As Jordan finished his speech, the room erupted into applause. He looked around, seeing the players nodding, the coaches smiling. They had understood the message. They had learned that success wasn't just about talent, it was about pushing through adversity and continuing to put in the effort every day. As the tournament games began, Jordan watched from the sidelines, seeing the players he had mentored put their words into action. The energy was different. They weren't just going through the motions anymore. They were playing with purpose, with the knowledge that their hard work had led them to this point. And as the games progressed, it became clear that the lessons they had learned, about effort, about resilience, had stuck. They were playing not just for themselves, but for their teammates, for the community that had supported them. Jordan couldn't help but smile. This was the moment he had been waiting for. It wasn't about the final score or the trophy. It was about seeing these kids live out the lessons he had tried to teach them, watching them apply the mindset of hard work and perseverance to their everyday lives. As the games continued, Jordan knew that the seeds he had planted had grown into something far bigger than just a basketball camp. They had become a way of life, a reminder that success wasn't given, it was earned. And for the players, that was the greatest victory of all.